everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Civ Show podcast, where we suck so you don't have to. I'm your host, MoySauce.
Razing Zozo.
And I got my power bat turned back on, so Nystagmus is here.
And we have a very special guest. We have QA lead, Firaxis QA lead, Carl Borderline Harrison. Welcome on the show, bud. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's great to be here.
Really excited to have you on, man. Really excited to kind of dive into this new frontier pass and this new journey for civilization and kind of even like gaming.
Love the challenges, love you guys' content and helping a rookie like me who always got
everything in civilization following. It's
stomped
a neat
on
idea.
deity,
But
turn into 6 wins since I started watching.
Let's just start with the like basic questions. How long have you been at Firaxis?
Nearly 10 years now, I think. Yeah, it's been a long time. I started back with the Civ 5 expansions, and I've been there for every one of the Civ 5 expansions, Beyond Earth, and of course now Civ 6.
And then for people, to give people some context, what exactly does a QA lead do?
Sure, yeah. So QA is quality assurance. So we test the game to make sure that it's functional, to iron out bugs that we encounter, and then we want to make sure that the game is balanced satisfactorily and that it's fun. And that's a big part of my job description, is making sure that the game is fun to play.
Fun to play doesn't necessarily mean balanced. Is that what I'm hearing out of you?
No, they're not mutually exclusive. So there's a lot that goes into balance for a game like Civ, right? I mean, there's a lot that goes into balance for any game, but for a game like Civilization that has so much replayability, so many different ways to approach it with different leaders for the same civilization, different civilizations that you can play, all the different parts and pieces that go into it modularly to make every single game experience unique, with so many maps, so many difficulty levels, and now so many game modes with the new Frontier Pass. There's a lot to consider when it comes to game balance. We have to consider the brand new player who's picking Civ up for the very first time. And we have to consider the person who's been playing since Civ 1, who plays Deity regularly and wins very quickly and often. We have to consider the multiplayer community. And we have to consider the people that like to try to maximize the potential of something. So we just released Portugal, for example, who gets trade routes for meeting new civilizations. Obviously, the more civilizations that are in your game, the crazier that gets. We can't balance the core mechanics of that around playing on the tiniest map size and the largest map size every single time. There has to be some kind of middle ground there. So when people dive into a game and they like to experience that kind of like crazy but just fun mechanic, and they want to maximize it out on a huge map, that's absolutely an option there for them. But that's not necessarily what we balance the civilization around, right? Because all of those things have to be considered at the same time.
Well, part of what I like about that is you kind of give the user the option to whether you want to play a balanced game or whether you just kind of want to have fun with it, right? So that the more civilizations they put in the game, yeah, it's going to get more unbalanced because they're going to get more trade routes. But that's their choice. That's user's choice, right? I kind of like that you did something like that. Is there any other like Civ that you kind of almost have like a user's choice? So, like if you have a certain setting, it's more unbalanced than others?
Yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of examples of that. You could play a Highlands map that has lots of hills, and then play a hill-based civilization like Gaul or the Inca. You could play a cold map or a tilted axis map, where the ice is on the inside instead of at the poles, and then play a cold or tundra-based civilization like Russia. Or you could play a Terra map where all civilizations start on one continent, and the other continent is completely empty, and you could play a civilization that gets the ability to sail over ocean very early, like Maori or Norway and go and settle on that new landmass entirely to yourself. So there's absolutely tons of combinations exactly like that within the game, and that's intentional. Like you're saying, we want that to be player choice. We want the player base to have the option to replay the game however they want to, and that was a big driving factor behind the game modes in New Frontier Pass that, as Anton keeps putting it, are the toppings on your Civilization ice cream sundae.
Did you have to specify ice cream sundae this time?
It sounds good, right? I mean, everyone likes ice cream.
Well,
so...
I think it's pretty apt, just like other toppings for Crazy Sundays, there are clear favorites, right? You have your chocolate chips, like the secret societies, right? Everyone uses secret societies now.
No,
and then
you got your cherry on top, like barbarian clans.
Yeah, or your heroes. Your heroes where King Arthur comes and helps you conquer everybody really quickly.
Right, exactly. And
oh, sorry, go ahead. Well, I was gonna say, speaking to balance, like it could become very unbalanced. Say when everybody's like, "Don't trade with Portugal." And don't build your cities on the coast. And I'll only allow you to have open borders for 50 gold so that you can come and build stuff over here. And then I'm going to declare war on you. And then you're not going to have any trade routes with anybody. Ha ha ha. Yeah, that was fun.
That happened last Sunday, folks, in case you didn't clue in.
Sunday.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely. And that's part of the...
bitter.
No, not at all. That's part of our consideration when we are working on the Civilization's balance, is that exact kind of thing. Not just how the map itself or your own personal playstyle with a civilization can change the way that their abilities work, but also the way that other players are able to impact those abilities. So in the case of Portugal, what Zoe is talking about here is Portugal can only trade over ocean, over water, and so if there aren't any coastal cities for them to trade with, their trading partners get very narrow very quickly. And so other players can purposefully not settle along the coastline, which in our game on Sunday, this past Sunday, I was purposefully doing that. And that is something that we have to take into consideration, right? Is to say, like, yes, they have this amazing ability with a pretty strong malice or negative part of the ability to go along with it, and that malice can then be exploited by other players in the game, and that's intentional.
Which also may bring in the difference balances between multiplayer and single player, because I think it'd be rare for the computers to exploit that quite the same way it was exploited against Zoe in that game with human players.
You'd be surprised. I've been, as you guys know, I watch a lot of Civ streams in the community, and I've seen several since the launch of Portugal where they're trying to trade with the AI, and the AI keeps settling one tile inland. So you'd be surprised how often things like that can come up.
So
I did not know that they would know to do that.
I want to dive into like exactly how a Civ gets balanced. So you're in charge of the testing, you're in charge of the balance. What's the process like? You have an idea, you have a Civ. How do you test if it's shippable? We'll say. Sure.
Yeah. Shippable is has a lot attached to it, right? There's a lot of things that go into that. Of course, it can't be from a systems perspective. It can't be broken. It has to actually work, right? So that's a big part of shippable in terms of the game itself. Right. We have to make sure that it's as bug free as we can possibly get it. We have to make sure that when you pick that civilization or that leader, that you're able to get into the game appropriately, that all of their abilities actually function. And that's all the technical side of quality assurance. And it's a big part of our job, is making sure that all of those things happen. But then you're also talking about the balance and how that is shippable. That's a little bit more flexible because we have the opportunity to do patches post-release to help with balance. And that's actually been a big driving factor behind the release schedule of New Frontier Passes. We knew that would allow us to engage with the community more frequently and to engage with patches more frequently so that we can do smaller but more often balance tweaks and updates to the game. which is why we were able to do some crazier things with the New Frontier Path civilizations than we have done in the past, because we have this quick turnaround time with frequent but smaller patches to address that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So what goes into balancing, right? That was your big question there.
Yeah.
When we are looking at balance, we look at it from a ton of different perspectives. And I talked a little bit about this earlier. We have to look at it from the perspective of a brand new player. And that means that we, as the testers and as experienced testers, have to try to put ourselves in that mindset. We have to say, forget everything we know and approach the game from the first time player perspective. And sometimes we will bring in people who have never played either Civilization before, or played that Civ before, or the expansion, or in this case New Frontier Pass's content before, and have them actually do that. But we'll try to do that ourselves and put ourselves into that mindset and approach it that way. We'll also have to play the maximum, play it on deity level and try to win as fast as we possibly can. We have to do it on Prince. We have to do it, which is the default the normal difficulty level. Then we have to test it on different map sizes. We have to test it against different other civilizations in single player to test it against the AI. We have to play against that civilization to see how their AI handles it. And then the last step is taking it into multiplayer and playing it against other people, because human players are always going to be better, always going to handle the abilities and the kit better. So we have to test against other people. That means both examining what the abilities do and how they feel when you are playing as that civilization, when you are playing against that civilization, and when that civilization is playing against itself. So we will have multiplayer games where multiple people pick the same civilization to test it from within the same game. So we have those direct points of comparison, but in different start locations, and everyone competing for the same things, right? Because wonders or great people are first come, first serve. So if one person is able to snag something before somebody else, we're able to directly see how that relates to the same civilization having something stolen like that. How different start locations affect the numbers, and we do this over and over and over and over again.
Wow.
Of course, at the same time, we're also running automated testing. We run auto plays where the AI is the only player in the game, and they're playing the games over and over and over and over again as well.
Van Bradley
we grab data. We grab data from all of these games. We'll look at city counts. We'll look at yield numbers, both at the empire level and at individual city levels. So we'll take what are our top 3 cities and grab all of the yields from those cities. We look at wonder counts. We look at great person counts. And we record all of these things for, say, every 50 turns, every 100 turns, every 150 turns, etc., etc. And then we'll have these tables of this data and be able to look at, okay, over the course of X number of games on these settings, and of course the settings are constantly changing too, because there's so many of them, and we try to cover as much as we can. We'll take a look at all of those different data points and see where the strengths are, see where the weaknesses are, see what the similarities are between all the different games, whether it's the same settings or different settings. And take all of those different things into consideration for how we approach the balance of the Civ, or the balance of a district, or the balance of units in the game. Everything goes through that process.
And I guess you don't always get it right, even with all that testing, which just shows how and a good example of that is airplanes. From vanilla to now, the airplane has gone through such a revision. Now there's a point to building them, but I remember when the game first came out, it's just oh my god, fighters suck. Why would I ever do this? It needs its own district. They don't do much damage. They die really easily. But now they're great. But you obviously tested them when they first came out and they seemed okay. But then so what goes into that, where you have to decide, okay, now we have to change this. Obviously you don't make that decision lightly, right?
No, not at all. There is a lot that goes into those kinds of rebalancing decisions, and it's oftentimes from data as well. So I want to chop this question up into a couple of different parts. First, I want to look at how we miss something like that, how something can go into the game and not be quite as well balanced as we would like it to be. And the second part, I would like to look at how we address rebalancing after something is already out in the public, right?
Okay.
So part A, when we're working on something, you know what? I'm going to pull up a calculator very quickly. I should have done this before. I knew that I would have to answer this at some point, but if we have,
it's like we all have calculators in our pockets nowadays. It's crazy.
Well,
right?
this came up. Yeah, right. This came up last week when we were just talking, and I said then I don't have a calculator in front of me, and I should have done the math ahead of time, and I didn't do it. Right. So if we have a team of 10 people working 40 hours a week, right? That's 400 hours of game time, assuming all of it is spent in the game, which of course it isn't, because we have to get the builds, we have to update the game, right? There's discussions about balance that happen. But even if we're playing, 100% of our work time is spent in the game. That's 400 hours a week, right? And if we work 52 weeks a year, that's 20,800 hours. So let's say 21,000 hours.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Good round.
Well, if 50,000 people buy the game or buy a content pack, because all the New Frontier Pass packs were sold individually as well, and they play for 1 hour immediately upon launch, which definitely happens if you go in and look at Steam's telemetry data for concurrent players. When we have a launch like that, you can see how many people are on, and it's more than that. That's 50,000 hours. We only had 21,000 hours over the course of an entire year working on the game, right? So in the first hour, there have been more people looking at the game or more gameplay seen than we had the entire time that we were able to test it. And that's just an example. Again, we're not actually able to spend that much time working solely in the game because we have those kinds of balance discussions. We have meetings. We have to get and update the build. And of course, we don't work 52 weeks a year. People have vacations and things like that too.
Right.
And then more than 50,000 people are playing the game. So that's, those numbers are huge. So when something goes into the game and then immediately afterwards, within the first day or first week or first month after release, you see bugs getting reported and people are going, how weren't these caught? Or you see balance issues getting reported, like say with airplanes, and people are saying, how did they think that this was okay? Well, that's why, because airplanes come in very late in the game, right? And so we've had to play, 2,100 hours or 21,000 hours of the game. Well, how many of those hours were spent just with airplanes, right? There's only so much time that we have that we can assign to or devote to all this stuff. So we're able to look at as much as we can, but there's still a limited time there. And then that gets into the public's hands, and the public are like, I want to do only airplanes all the time. And they dump 50,000 hours into just airplanes.
A good portion of those 50,000 people are specifically looking for exploits.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And we are too, granted. But again, that the time difference there, 21,000 hours, we can't spend all of it looking for exploits. And then we have people spending 50,000 hours total, cumulatively, looking just for exploits. Like, there's a huge difference there. So that's how things like that happen, right? So we will balance it to the best of our ability, to the best of what we think we have based on our data. And then within 1 hour of a launch, there has already been more data collected than we could ever possibly put into it. And this is not just a thing with Firaxis or with Civilization. This is the case for every single video game that ever gets published. Right. And it's how you see those kinds of things come out in the public. So yes, that's the initial part of that. We will balance to the best of our ability. To the best of our ability is not necessarily to the public satisfaction, and that's the case even when we do think that even after the fact it's right. And again, I'm going to go back to Portugal with this. We've seen a lot of comments, or at least I've seen a lot of comments since Portugal has released, saying Portugal is so OP. We just talked about this, right?
Okay.
Portugal is so OP, and we're like, well, but you're playing on a huge map with like an archipelago setup, so there's tons of water. Well, if you play on continents and it's a small map, which is what we have to balance the core of the abilities around, then it's way more balanced, especially if you're doing something like other players are settling inland kind of thing, like we were saying. When that comes in with the exploit kind of situation, so players will purposefully try to exploit the game to the best of their ability because it's fun, and that's the player choice. We want players to be able to do that. That's the glory of Civilization. Is there's so many different options and ways to approach it, and that's intentional. But it does mean that you can create these crazy combinations, so then we get the feedback that something isn't balanced correctly when that's not necessarily what we were balancing against, at least all of the time. So that's part A. Part B. What was part B? Part B was after the fact.
Yeah.
Okay.
Part
Great
B
answer.
was when something has already come out. Again, we'll go back to airplanes. How do we approach rebalance?
Right. Okay.
So a big driving factor behind rebalance is that data that we are then collecting from the public, and that comes in the form of reports on forums like Reddit, Civ Fanatics, Steam. There's dozens of them out there, right? We're in there, we're checking them, we're reading posts as frequently as we can. We're gathering data from game reports, from bug reports, all kinds of things like that. There is also a bug reporting system, and when, like, if you get a crash, you might have that pop up that says, would you like to submit this? So we do get some data from that as well, if you click yes on that. And then, we're watching people's YouTube videos. We're watching people's live streams. We're reading people's minds. And
Yes,
we are
the mind reading
yeah,
machine.
little did you know I could do that.
No, go away.
But we're getting the data from after the fact, and we're hearing everybody's opinions. And when we hear something often enough, we go, okay, this is coming up a lot. Let's take another look at it. And so then we do what I was talking about earlier, where we do all kinds of data sets. We do the autoplays, we do single player data sets, and we do multiplayer games where we're doing all kinds of different comparisons. And we'll take a look at whatever system it is, or whatever bug it is, or whatever balance problem it is, and we'll just examine it again to the best of our ability. And so we'll say, okay, the community thinks this is what our data says. And then we'll compare those 2 points, and we'll see, okay, do our data points line up with what the community says? Oftentimes, yes, that is the case. And we'll go, that means that there definitely needs to be a balance change here. And we will adjust it based on both the community feedback and our data, and we'll test those changes. Again, that comes back to you were asking about what is shippable. We have to make sure that it works, right? That's a key part of it. Is we always have to make sure that everything is working properly. So we'll test to make sure that it works. Test to make sure that the new balance feels appropriate. So that means regathering all of that data. This is not a short process.
Doesn't sound
we have to regather all the data with the new numbers, and then we have to also see if it's fun. Are the new changes, the new implementations, fun to play with? If all of them are good to go, then it becomes shippable. It might not be. Sometimes we'll go through multiple iterations. We'll have to make another change, and then we'll have to do the whole process all over again. We'll have to make sure that everything is not broken. We have to make sure that everything is balanced with the new numbers. But that's effectively how we approach something once it's come out. We have to get enough reports on it, or it could be that we get enough reports on it internally. If enough of our testers are saying this is not working right, does not feel good, does not work out right, then we'll potentially reconsider something from that as well. But a big driving factor behind balance changes to things that have already come out do come from the public.
I guess that's
we
what
really try to
Earth
listen.
Goddess. That's what happened to Earth Goddess. Is like having it went from 2 faith to 1 faith, right? Just everyone picking it because it was so good.
Yeah,
ubiquitous.
It was everyone picking it all the time, and then also the amount of faith that was coming from it. Pantheons are not necessarily meant to be this huge buff that lasts the entire game. Not that it doesn't last the entire game. Obviously, all of them do, except for ones that literally stop working. Like Monument to the Gods is ancient and classical. God of the Forge is ancient and classical.
Yes.
But besides those, they obviously do last the entire game. But it's not necessarily meant to be incredibly strong throughout the entire game. Earth Goddess got stronger as the game went on. It got even better, and that's the case with a couple of them, like say Divine Spark. The more of the buildings you build that give great person points, the more great person points you'll gather. Right. Earth Goddess was a particularly strong offender with that, though. The idea behind Pantheons is that it is early game religion. It is ancient and classical era religion when pantheons of multiple gods from the Norse, from the Egyptians, from the Greco-Romans, those kinds of groups were very prevalent, and obviously all over the world. I'm naming Eurocentric civilizations there, but it was not an isolated phenomenon. This was all over the place, but usually older. And then in medieval and Renaissance, you saw the evolution of monotheologies, and that's the intention behind the pantheon to religion formula that we have in the game. So those pantheons are meant to be more early game focused for the most part. And so seeing that most people were picking Earth Goddess, and that Earth Goddess was providing more faith in large quantities as the game progressed, and that it was providing faith in such large quantities, really was a driving factor behind that particular balance change, which in this case was a nerf. No one likes nerfs. We like to keep the game strong. Again, that was the thing behind the New Frontier Pass getting crazier and crazier with the civs, right? We had some really wild things, big ideas, and it's a ton of fun.
Yeah.
But there's a scale to it, and we do sometimes have to rein things in a little bit too.
I justified that nerf, man. Everybody was picking it. Why? And the fact that stone circles was 2 faith as well for stone tiles, and the fact like if you take the amount of breathtaking tiles and the amount of stone tiles, right? Those are not even close to each other. And so I felt like that was a much needed nerf. When it happened, I was like, yeah, like, dude, that was awesome. Like, thank God, because everyone's picking this. It's getting ridiculous.
I think preserves also made it overpowered because you can create new breathtaking tiles, right?
Right.
And so
that was another factor behind it. Once we knew that, again, we knew that going into it. We knew creating the preserve that would be a frequently picked pantheon going with that. But that was also part of that decision. Was we knew that the pantheon was there. And we felt that it was time for a potential change. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. One of the I know we talk about like, the community kind of says things. Have you ever done it like not necessarily the community saying something, but noticing that a certain mechanic is not being used by the community as often as you would like, and change a balance based on that? Like for example, like the planes example, people aren't using them, or someone's not using a particular unit.
Warrior monks could be one.
Okay.
Warrior monks. Warrior monks are one.
The barbarian outpost, you get 100 heal from killing a barbarian post. I never see anybody take that ever. Those are 2 examples. Okay.
So there are pantheons that fit that category. Pantheons are meant to not all be created equal. That's why it's a first come first serve system.
Fair.
So there are some that are intentionally meant to be towards the bottom of the list there. We do think that keeping it mildly equalized is somewhat important. Again, that goes into the Earth Goddess nerf and Goddess of the Harvest nerf once we removed that a couple months ago. Oh, yeah. We do want things to be the choices to be choices between multiple things, and sometimes that does mean bringing things back, and sometimes that does mean bringing them up, and that could be because they're not being used, like you're saying. I can't think of any specific examples off the top of my head where that has been the case, where we go, this thing isn't being used, we need to address it. Most of the time we're hearing about it being used in some respect. It's just not always necessarily in a positive manner of feedback. Hermetic Order, for example, right? We got a lot of feedback on hermetic order.
Yeah. I thought that was going to come up.
Right. So that is an example. Like it wasn't being played, but at the same time, it was. People were saying, "I'm picking this, and I'm not finding ley lines. I'm picking this, and it doesn't feel strong." And then I'm no longer picking this because of those things. So it definitely hermetic order was picked the least out of the three, or out of all four, the three other excuse me, secret societies. And so that warranted a balance change there. But that doesn't mean that there was a lack of feedback or even a lack of screenshots or save game files or things like that being delivered to us through the forums. And so we still had plenty of data points there. Same thing with the airplanes. Like back at launch, yes, people weren't using airplanes very often, but part of that was because the data had already come out. People were already reporting, I've been using airplanes, and they're not strong enough. They don't do enough damage. And the production investment into the district and then the unit, and then the gold maintenance cost of the unit is not warranted for the effectiveness of the unit. So we still get that kind of data. I think that in nearly all cases that is true. But the fact that something isn't being used when we want it to be is absolutely a driving factor. We just have data on it as well.
And the last burning question I had about all the data you collect, which is the autoplays, which I think some of our fans would like to know, is during your autoplays, is Coupe as bad as Van Bradley's bracket match he's had? Because Coupe was like notoriously horrible in that bracket. He just kept like settling cities all over the place and not really collecting himself.
Yeah. So our autoplays, our autoplay testing is managed by our AI engineers. So I don't actually interact with that directly, and I don't see the logs and stuff. It's actually more helpful for them because they set up the scripts for the automated testing, and then they gather the logs directly from that and compare them. It cuts out the middleman to have us not in the equation, right? It saves time there. So I don't know. I'm able to see them sometimes, like when we were in the office before COVID happened. The autoplay machines were set up in hallways so that people could watch them. And sometimes, I would be on my way to or from a meeting, and I would stop and I would stand there and watch them play sometimes. So yeah, that was interesting. I think that Coupe's settling has always been a little bit suboptimal. I don't know the extent to that, and I also don't know the evolution of that over time. So, for example, I don't recall what it was that we were talking about earlier, but I had thought of this, but I forgot to bring it up. There are often ripple effects from changes. I think it was when we were talking about going back and rebalancing something, right?
Yeah,
so there are whenever you change something, there's ripple effects from it. So and that's whether it's in a single iteration or multiple iterations. It can have ripple effects across multiple systems every single time, and some of them are unintended, and some of them are unseen until later, right? Especially if it's a more niche case. So when we are working on something, there might be ripple effects into a system like AI settling, right? So we might have something that improves the quality of one tile over another all of a sudden because of a district that's come out, or because of a wonder that's come out, or any number of things like that might be having an impact on it. And so the AI's behavioral trees are taking something into account that it wasn't before, and so now that they're changing. So I don't know the precise or even imprecise path of Coupe's settling behavior. But I do think it has probably been a little bit suboptimal in a big picture sense since he's come out.
I have a quick question. I don't know if about AI. I don't know if you can answer it. If you can't, that's totally cool. I'm curious how they work on a high level? You just mentioned behavioral trees. So is it that every leader has like their own agenda, apart from the actual agenda, but their own agenda of like how much I want science, how much I want to settle cities, how much I want military, and it kind of just prioritizes on the fly? Is that how it works?
So I'm no AI engineer.
Right.
But as I understand it, there's all kinds of things that are getting weighed in at any given point. And so they'll be running an operation for something, and they might have to change because of a new input, and that could be a war is declared, or a wonder was stolen, or a wonder becomes available,
Right.
Or a district becomes available. There's so many things happening in Civ all the time, right? So many things, and even for a human player, unless you are a Civ streamer that or CPL player that is playing the game all the time at really high levels, and so you know exactly what the timing is, and you remember the production numbers and the exact unlocks and everything. If you're not one of those players, there's a lot to remember. Even if you are one of those players, there's a lot to remember, and it's hard to do. But especially if you're not one of those players, you're just playing casually, there's so much to remember. And I see questions all the time about little things that as somebody who plays the game all the time, I'm very familiar with, but I can totally understand how somebody who doesn't play it all the time isn't as familiar with it. When does this happen? How does that happen? When do I settle more cities? When do I start building universities? How do I prioritize universities, right? And so the AI at the same time is getting the same kind of inputs. They're getting, okay, I have to pick my tech, I have to pick my civic, I have to do this wonder, I have war declared over here, I want to declare war over here. And the units have to go different ways, and all these different things. And the AI behavioral trees have to evaluate all of these different inputs at the same time, all the time, and course correct constantly, right? It's a complicated system. Like I said, I'm no AI engineer, but I applaud the work that our team does for that. I think that they do excellently with the sheer quantity of stuff that the AI has to handle, and that overall our AI performs very well with all of that considered. And over the course of the New Frontier Pass, we've been constantly making AI iterations. Every single release that we've had has had AI changes. Every single balance patch that we have had and free community update that we've had has had AI iterations. And I've seen even our top level players in the streaming community say after every single one, literally every single release, they go, the AI has gotten better. I've seen the AI start doing this thing better or start doing this thing better every single time. And that's been really awesome to see, because I know that our AI engineers have put so much time and effort into it, really trying to address the areas of feedback that we're getting from the community about places that the AI has been weak. And that's something that we really wanted to come out with strong out of the gate and continue to support throughout the life of the Frontier Pass.
I think the AI gets a lot of flack. I think a lot of people like to complain about it because it's easy. It's so easy to complain about AI when you don't understand it. So I don't know. Like,
it's a good point.
I'm a programmer, right? So like I kind of understand a little bit of AI. Like I understand at a very high level, and I always tell people, I'm like, dude, it's way more complicated than you think. You'll change one thing and like 20 billion other things is going to change, and suddenly like it doesn't work anymore. So like
I think people just underestimate how complicated the decision tree has to be in a game like Civ, right? Like it took us a while to build a computer that can beat human players at chess, right? But chess has a finite number of possible combinations.
Thank you.
Whereas like the number of possible combinations that Civilization has makes that look like, you know, a walk in the park by comparison. And so to expect like the AI to like start trumping human players that are playing at very high levels, I think is a little bit unfair. And emphasis on little bit, because that's not that it's actually really unfair.
Sure.
So
and even then they do still trump them at times. I was watching a stream just earlier today where deity level AI turned around and declared war on the human player and made their game go in a very unexpected direction. Not what they were planning on trying to do, and it made them have to completely change their own course. The same exact thing happens to AI, right? The AI will have a plan. They'll be working on something that they want to do. A human player will declare war. Another AI player will declare war, and they have to completely change. Now, granted, deity level AI has tons of bonuses that makes that way easier, but there's still so many decisions that have to go into that. Like you're saying, they have to suddenly change all of those inputs and say, okay, well, now I need to change my production. I need to change, where these units are going and how they're moving, and all of those different things all at the same time. There's a lot for the system to handle.
People also forget that when we use chess as the example, it's also got to be programmed to think moves ahead. So not just like the decision that has to be made right now. What's the decision that's being made right now that's going to make me do a move 7 moves from now? Mm-hmm. And in Civilization, that becomes infinitely complicated. Like as you're going down that, so the computer has to handle all of that too. So, yeah, as someone who gets stomped on the diet by deity all the time, I think AI is just as hard as it should be.
Not to mention, do you want to get Skynet? Because that's how you get Skynet. When Civ AI gets too smart, it wakes up and realizes, I know what the real solution is here. We don't want that, okay? We can't make Civ AI too smart.
That's what he's saying.
It's already reading our thoughts. Yeah, it's already looking at our brain patterns and our eye movement. Who knows? Like, we play Civ so much. Some of us play 6-7 hours a day. Not really, but yeah, we do.
Some people do. Some people do.
When it's 4 a.m, that's when it gets most of its information from you.
Just one more turn, man. No,
one more turn.
Yes, right.
One more turn. Give Skynet more.
I experienced one more turn working on the game. It'll hit quitting time, and I'll be like, but this I have this one more thing to do, and that could be a task. That could be like, I have this one more thing to test, or it could literally just be, as a player, somebody playing the game, I want to complete this wonder, I want to complete this era, or whatever it happens to be, and it leads to another thing, and it leads to another thing, and before I know it, it's been, more
Let's
time.
play a quick game of Civ, said no one ever.
Yeah, exactly. There's a solution, guys. Casinos figured it out. All you got to do, turn off your phone, get rid of all your clocks, and blank out your windows. You won't be able to tell what time it is, and there you go. Yep. Problem solved.
Yep.
Do you want to move on to some community questions? Okay,
sure.
Let's do that. I caught one in the chat that I really enjoyed, and I think you have an answer for. It was from, let me take a look real quick. I think it was from Butterfinger. Where is it? Oh, Stogie. It was from Stogie. They wonder if they have any folks on staff with degrees or training in history, or if they get consultants. Carl?
Yeah, wasn't Carl? Yeah.
So I have a Bachelor of Arts in classical culture, so that's Greco-Roman culture, and in Latin. And I have been able to put that to use working on the game, particularly in Mediterranean civs. And it's awesome. It feels awesome getting to use it that way. It's not the way that I intended. It's not the way that I expected to go in life, but getting to use my education to further the flavor and historical accuracy of the content that we have in the game really feels fantastic. And I am absolutely not the only one. We have tons of experts on different areas of history and civilization, whether it's amateur or professional levels of interest and knowledge. We absolutely have that represented. Yeah.
So then where did you learn QA?
Sorry, real quick, but we do still have experts. We do still bring in experts, and we talk to experts about various things. If we're missing, if there's a piece of historical information that we're missing, we do talk to experts for it. Or if we just want to double check, you will talk to experts for that too. So the answer is yes to both. Sorry, continue.
So yeah, where did you learn QA in programming if it wasn't through school?
So QA was luck. This is an interesting story. I actually didn't anticipate telling this story tonight, but I'll tell the story of how I started it at Firaxis. So I have been a long time Civ fan. I think my first Civ was Civ 4 in high school.
Nice.
I was actually I played. I no longer play, but I played French horn, and I was in band class. And one of the other players, French horn players, was like, "Hey, have you ever heard of this game, Civilization?" And I was like, "No, what is it? What does it do?" And he was like, "It's like the coolest thing. You go through history, and you can have all the history is anachronistic, and you can have it at different things, different times. So you can have like tanks fighting knights, and you can have battleships fighting wooden frigates." And I was like, "That sounds awesome!" And I want to play that game. So I did. I went and I bought it and I played it and I loved it and I played it all through high school and I played the expansions, all of it. Nice. Well, then I went to college and Civ 5 was announced, and I lost it. I was like, "This is the coolest thing ever." I was reading every single press release that came out about the game, and the fact that like they were bringing in language experts to do the voice recordings in the actual languages of the leaders that they spoke at the historical time. I was like, that is the coolest thing, and now that's what we do for all the leaders, right? We've been doing that ever since. But at the time, that was new, and it was so cool to hear about. So I was so excited, and I was like, I'm buying this game, and I'm buying this game for all of my friends because I want to play multiplayer with them. Because they were all like, I had multiple friends who were interested in the game, but they were like, I don't, it's college, we're all broke kids, and they were like, I don't know if I want to spend the money on it, and I was like, it's okay, Christmas present.
Wow, what a friend! What a
so
friend.
yeah,
so
I went and I bought the game for everybody, and had it shipped to their houses. I of course got the special edition. Came with all the little miniatures and the soundtrack and the art book and everything.
Wow.
And all of theirs arrived on launch day because I paid for overnight shipping.
Oh no.
Mine did not.
Irony.
Oh.
Yeah, right. So I was like, I have to play. I can't not play Civ on launch day. I was dying for it. I'd been dying for it for months. I couldn't wait. Didn't have a car at this point in college. I did later, but not at this point. So and it was after the buses had stopped. So I walked to the mall to GameStop and I bought a copy of the game and I walked home and I played it all night long. And I had a great time playing it. And then when my copy finally arrived, I took the game key from that and the disc that I had bought and gave it to a different friend, so even somebody else had it, and we played all these multiplayer games and everything. Yeah, that was my Civ career up until that point. Oh, and Civ Rev, I had played Civ Rev a ton when it came out, obviously on Xbox 360 at the time. So then I graduated. The first expansion, Gods and Kings, had not come out yet. And I moved to Maryland looking for work. And I met somebody who at the time was working at Firaxis. And they said, "Do you want me to pass along your resume?" And I said, "Yeah, obviously." Wow. Like, we were both Civ fans. We started talking and we were like, "Oh, this is such a great game." And he's like, "Well, that's where I work." And it was
so cool.
Honest to God, it was total chance that I met this person. Well, I landed my interview and I went in and I talked to them, talked to the interviewers, and I told them this exact story. I said I walked to the mall to buy like a 5th copy of Civ 5 because I had to play it that day when my special edition did not arrive, and they were so impressed with my level of enthusiasm for the game. Obviously, there was a lot more to it than that. I had the history degree, and everything, but like I had the clearly had passion for the game and tons of knowledge of the game. And I already lived in the state. I didn't have to be relocated or anything. I lived nearby. So there were several factors that went into it, but I think it was that story that really did it. And wow. So that's how I got into QA, how I got my foot in the door, and I've been there ever since. So it's it's been a long road of learning, and I've also self-taught myself how to program since then.
Nice.
That is also an ongoing process. There's so much to learn, but a lot of it is
like, come on, you don't
right.
know
A lot of it is
Yeah.
self-taught since then, or on-job training. But yeah, so for people who are interested in this kind of thing, like who is a big part of it, but always reach out and apply and keep trying. I get questions, how do I apply to Firaxis all the time? Any job listings we have are always up on our website. So go there, check, and keep trying, keep educating yourself, keep learning, and keep following your passions, because that makes a difference.
Hey man, thanks for the insight.
Yeah.
That is
Cool
great.
story though.
That was a very cool story.
Okay, let's move on to another community question here. This is a good one from Kiwi Mullet Boy. I like your name, by the way.
Oh, Kiwi.
Are there any additions to the game that didn't make it in that you were really hoping to add?
So the interesting thing about New Frontier Pass is that with it being on a faster release schedule, we were able to react to things quicker than we would otherwise, and because things were coming out, we would have one release, and then there were many releases ahead of that. That gave us the opportunity to make changes on stuff that was coming up. So, for example, we released the free Tekken Civic Shuffle mode, and got a lot of really positive response to that. And that one was one of the free community updates.
Mm-hmm.
But we had plans for a scenario that was further down the line. We've had a fair amount of success with scenarios in the past. If people are unfamiliar with them, the Black Death and War Machine scenarios that came out in Gathering Storm are very popular. They're excellent. I know you guys are history buffs. If you have not played War Machine, it's only 2 players, but highly recommend it. World War I multiplayer scenario. It is
that sounds cool.
Excellent, very fun, and play some period appropriate music for yourself in the background. It very much heightens the experience. But we released Red Death Season 2 at the beginning of the New Frontier Pass. We released the Pirate scenario, and those have also had a ton of success. But when we did the free Tekken Civic Shuffle mode, we got a lot of feedback that this was the kind of thing that people really wanted, and it had a better reception than the scenarios did. So we were able to course correct on that and go, okay, rather than coming out with a scenario later, what can we do instead? And we changed that into the Barbarian Clans mode, which has also been a free community update. So that yes, there are absolutely things that we did change as a result of the community feedback over the course of the New Frontier Pass. And it's been really great to get that level of feedback and make those kinds of changes to drive the content that we're delivering to you guys.
And we're loving it.
Nice.
I just a comment. Like I remember when the Aztec came out, and I think Nubia being a bit skeptical about the direction that you guys were taking. That I felt like as a Civ fan, well, I just bought this upgrade, and now you're gonna make me pay for this, and I didn't like it so much. I still got it, but I didn't like it so much. But then I got to say, and I think the other host would agree, the way that you guys did the Frontier Pass was just awesome. It was Civ has been a great investment because it's so much fun, and I've used it tons. I have games I don't play that often. That's not true for Civ. But then the Frontier Pass, I feel that you guys had a big turning point with how you viewed the community, and you became one with the community once the Frontier Pass, because we were all this is great. We all got ours right at the beginning. We paid right away, and seeing it as an investment, and knowing that every couple months, well, what's it going to be? And every time not being disappointed. And I just I'm a business buff, so I just loved that for Firaxis marketing. I thought that was genius, and I'm guessing you guys found the community responded way more favorably to the Frontier Pass than doing the one-offs. So whoever came up with that, I guess you came up with that, Carl. That was a genius move. Yeah, and I hope we see more of that. But like, yeah, and with such anticipation, like we were excited, like where it might have been hard to go to sleep because we were excited. Oh, Thursday release day! And every time, never disappointed. So that's not a question. That's just more of a bravo.
Well, thank you. Yeah. You know, we wanted to build content on a more frequent basis and allow us to react to fan feedback quicker than a standard expansion format. And that was a huge driving factor behind this. We definitely wanted to have that kind of community outreach. You know, like I said, we have always been reading forums, listening to fan feedback, and incorporating that into our patches and our designs. But doing the New Frontier Pass monthly release cycle allowed us to interact with it more directly than we ever have before, and respond to things faster because it is every single month and has been every single month, and that's been awesome for us. So, you know, building and delivering a season pass with monthly content was a new undertaking for the studio, but it's been hugely successful. And that's awesome that everybody has enjoyed it so much. During the first month of launch, we saw more people jump on and play the game on a daily basis. We did for either Rise and Fall or the Gathering Storm expansion.
Wow.
I noticed that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the daily active Civ 6 players has increased over time, which is no small feat in the 5th year of the product's life cycle.
That blows my mind.
That's the genius part of it.
Crazy.
And I think part of that is also the I was going to say the game modes, because like I know we talk about like, you know, giving new civs every single time. My favorite part is like finding out what the new game mode's going to be, and what kind of spice that adds to the game.
He loves
especially since
Apocalypse
it allows you to be I love it that and I understand. But especially since it allows the game to be more flexible. Like that's why the newest one, the zombie one, so that's like, you know, that just struck me as like the developers just trying to have fun with the game. Come up with something like that's just crazy and fun, and see what happens, because you don't have to, you know, because, you know, zombies don't really exist, hopefully. And so
not yet.
And so
like
that Skynet we were talking about earlier, right?
I love too, though, that we've also gotten to know the development team, because you guys use yourselves in the commercials, and I love that.
That's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, so it's like you didn't hire actors or anything. You didn't say, "Hey, Sean Bean, come up from the basement. We need you," because I'm guessing you guys keep them in your basement.
Something like that.
We got to meet all of you, and I think there's like usually a new face each time too. So we enjoyed your commercials. Like they were great.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, it's been so much fun filming them. Well, whether we were doing them at home initially and we were able to do things like include our pets in them, or when we started going back into the office and filming them there, and we were able to do more things like effects and props, which, you know, you guys are all familiar with those videos at this point. It was a ton of fun getting to film all of those and getting to participate in that. It's been awesome to try out the different game modes, both as from a design perspective and as a player myself. And yes, zombie mode is absolutely a situation of us wanting to do something that's just a little bit different and fun. And Secret Society is the same kind of thing, right? Like that's sort of there is some historical reference for some things, right? Like Illuminati and alchemists and things like that.
The ley lines, right? Like where all the wonders are supposed to be. I thought it would be cool if all the wonders built in the game made like new ley lines, because they all like line up or something.
That'd be cool. There's an idea there. But you know, trying to mess with things in a somewhat ahistorical manner like that has been a ton of fun. But at the same time, we knew that there was a lot of demand and desire for historical modes, and so that's been a driving factor as well. So we wanted to have a good mix of those kinds of things, and throw some twists in there that players weren't expecting. And Zombies has absolutely been a good example of that. I know that prior to the release, like after we announced Zombies, but prior to the release of the DLC, there was a lot of skepticism about the game mode and people saying, I don't know about it. And since it's come out, I don't think I've seen a single negative thing about it. Now, granted, I can't look through 100% of the posts and comments that people make, so I'm sure that they're out there. But there have been so many positive responses to it. I was seeing, even just today, I've been seeing people's comments saying, I've been playing with the zombies mode, and I like it way more than I thought I was going to. I think a big part of that is because, like, every single game with zombies is a little bit different, right? So sometimes you have almost no zombies at all, and sometimes you have that kind of zombie apocalypse situation where it's just there's a ton of them and they're just coming at you all the time.
Yeah.
But the game we played just this past Sunday, which had zombies mode turned on, there were some, but I don't think it was ever overwhelming. They were mostly
very annoying though.
Annoying for you at times, attacking your walls constantly, but they never like captured a city of yours, and we never had these massive waves. I don't think we even built barricades and stuff like that to have to defend. But those options are still there, and I love being able to use those defensive improvements that are new to that game mode in general gameplay ways that have nothing to do with the zombie mode whatsoever. And getting to build these lines of defense against, like, playing on a DD level game and building these lines of defense, like, especially if there's mountain passes or something, you can barricade them up and stuff. Oh, it's so much fun to be able to do this kind of tower defense setup. Or playing as China, since China's Great Wall improvement automatically counts as a barricade. I remember the first time that we implemented that in the game, and I was testing it. I wasn't actually testing for that effect. I was just playing, and China ended up as one of the random civilizations that I had. And zombie mode was enabled. Every single game we played at the time had zombie mode enabled. So I was neighbors with China, and they came over and settled way, way too close to my territory. So I went over and I attacked them. I think I was playing as Gaul. Gaul's, as I said this past Sunday, Gaul is very good against zombies mode because they can build 2 defensive districts and they get additional combat strength for adjacent units. So I went over to capture their cities, and they had built great walls everywhere. Great walls as barricades exert zone of control, so they stop your unit movement. So my units that I thought I would be marching straight up on roads that I had sent traders in, so I thought I'd be marching straight up to their cities and attacking, had to stop in every single tile along the way to their cities. And the city and their encampments and their archers were just taking shot after shot after shot at my units, decimated my army. It was like the most brutal defeat in a war that I have tried to fight I think I've ever gotten. And it was such a cool moment. It was just like their actual Great Wall was doing its job as a Great Wall and defending them. It felt really, really cool. And that was just the first time that I ever experienced it. I've experienced that kind of thing a lot since then. And I think that the game mode is still young, so we'll see a lot more posts and comments and things about that exact kind of setup as we continue. I really hope people continue to play with zombies mode, because ultimately zombies are just a different take on barbarians, right? It just adds a little bit more challenge to the barbarian game. And I think that people could have a ton of fun with the defensive improvements, approaching zombies as barbarians, even for those people who are skeptical.
One last question, Carl, before we wrap up, because we are running out of time. I want to know.
Oh man, I didn't even notice it flew by.
I know. I want to know, Carl, and I want to hear a personal opinion on this. As a person who is a part of the content creator community, I think you've been a part of TGM's community for a very, very long time, and he's been streaming Civ forever. And now that with the New Frontier Pass coming out, we've seen a surgence of content creators with both Peppermint Butler, ourselves, Foibles, Van Bradley, 100 Games, 100 Days, OnSpot. There's an incredible amount of people.
All the CPL people, yeah.
All the CPL people. Did you expect the amount of content creators to come out of New Frontier Pass? Was that part of the plan? And how do you feel as being a part of the community as well?
So we knew that having the regular monthly releases would increase player engagement as a whole, right? Part of that was focused on content creation. We already had a good streaming community. We had streamers like The Game Mechanic, Spiffing Brit, Potato McWhiskey, some really awesome people already out there. Quill already out there making content for the game. We knew that having this kind of monthly release schedule would mean that there would be more for content creators to create content about regularly, more often, but also at the player level, right? Like if we release a big expansion, there's a surge at first, and then it dies off because everything has already been experienced. You get all of the civs at once, you get whatever new systems are all at once, and you just dive into it, bam, 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 and that's it, right? With this kind of monthly release schedule, we have been able to keep everybody on the hook with everyone's excitement about what's coming out next, like you were talking about, hearing about the next Civ, hearing about the next game mode, but also experiencing those things as they do come out, trying different combinations, playing as different Civs and different game modes, playing different game modes with other game modes, playing things without any game modes, just at the base level, new map scripts, the scenarios that have come out, all kinds of different things all at the same time. And we did do that intentionally so that we would keep that level of engagement. We would be able to provide more for content creators. And we've heard nothing but positive feedback about that. And it's been really, really awesome for us to see that the community has been that excited about it and to have that level of positivity and excitement about the game.
And then how do you feel as part of the community? How does that make you feel?
Awesome. Yeah, when releases come out, that's the best part. It's the most rewarding part. It's why I'm in everybody's streams all the time. Getting this, well, obviously it's part of the job as well, hearing the feedback, hearing the bugs, seeing them, firsthand. People will test things for me. That's awesome. When I'm in somebody's stream and they're like, hey, we just got this bug. Let's see what happens when we do this. TGM for science. And they'll actually test it for me, or I could get a save from the streamer. That's been really great too. But hearing all the excitement, hearing all the positive comments and feedback and everything from people firsthand has been awesome, and it's absolutely the most rewarding part. And it's why we do this, because we have such an awesome, amazing community.
Okay, I lied. There is one more question. I hear that there's an April release coming out, Mr. Harrison. 2/3 of all of the civilizations are getting changed. Can we get like some insight on this? Like,
So there's the biggest free community update that we've had for the New Frontier Pass will be coming out in April. Tons of things to be excited for there. I can't talk about any specifics, unfortunately, but I do know that Anton has already said in a few interviews that it is the biggest community patch that we've had and or community update that we've had. So that is true. It's the biggest one. And I think that people are going to be really happy with some of the stuff that's coming out. So stay tuned. Keep watching all the social media channels for Firaxis for that announcement once it comes out. And we really look forward to everybody getting that later this month.
Oh, so excited for that, man.
Very
excited.
Very excited.
Yeah.
Carl, dude, thank you so much for being on the show. Really, really appreciate it. You gave some amazing stories today, and I'm sure that everybody, everyone in the chat right now is thankful for your work, thankful for Civilization, and for being on the show. So thank you very much, Carl.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Everyone's clapping at home right now, aren't you? We know you are, guys. We know you're clapping at home.
So why don't you take us out of here?
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much again, Carl, and it was really fun playing you on Sunday. I look forward to our next bout, where I can attack you with knights and all that glory. But anyways, Moy, why don't you tell everybody about that tweeting bird you keep trying to capture? It gets away every time.
That tweeting bird, that tweeting bird is also known as Twitter. You can follow us on our Twitter at TheCivShow. It's where we like to post the most up-to-date Civilization. We'll retweet Civilization and the Civ Show updates. So be sure to follow us at TheCivShow.
And of course, Nystagmus, you're still doing those test tube experiments. How's that working out?
It's going pretty good. You can always check out our YouTube channel. That's where we, if you miss any of our streams, that's where all the VODs go up. All the different creators of the Civ Show also create YouTube videos. So we have the Razing reviews, Moy makes reaction videos, and I absolutely do promise that another Better Noah Leaders video is coming. So I also have that series as well. So definitely check it out, subscribe, and ring the bell.
Ring that bell. I'm always going to sing that song. And of course, if you're looking for the more intimate connection to the Civ Show community, join us on our Discord. It is the watering hole of the Civ Show community. People gather for all sorts of reasons, from pet picks to talking about Civ. And of course, as you know, we now have 5 days of Civ Show fun. 5 days of Civ Show fun, starting with the Civ Show every Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We got Mondays afternoon tea with Nystagmus. I think that's 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Good morning amenities with yours truly, Razing Zozo, around 9 a.m. on Tuesdays Eastern Standard Time. And of course, you can join Moy at night on Wednesdays, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Crack a beer with Moy. And of course, we close every week, and I don't know if we're gonna have another week like this, with the Civ podcast, 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. Thank you all so much. Hit that subscribe button for us on Twitch as well. And man, we got an exciting show, don't we? Coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, we have on Sunday. We have an Australia or Oceania rather. Australia.
The Oceania.
Versus North America, or Canada, I guess in this case. We're going to feature Sophie Quest, 100 Games, 100 Days, and SG Nanime, all on the same show. 3v3, the North American boys and the Oceania people over there. So that's going to be on Sunday. And a little bit of
Crikey!
Next Thursday, we have Jeff Knorr on the podcast next Thursday.
Wow.
So stay tuned for that. Firaxis
Very cool.
Firaxis Week. All right, so let's go raid. This is a big one too. Let's go raid 100 games, 100 days. We've never raided 100 games, 100 days.
He's never on right now. This is great. This is fantastic.
Awesome.
Oh man, thanks again, Carl.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me.
Have a good night.
See you, everybody.
Good night, good night, good night.